Hey everybody, welcome back to RC with Adam. My name is Adam. Today we're talking about rate and expo. What the heck is rate and expo? You hear everybody talking about rate and expo. What kind of rates you got? Oh, I've got these rates. Are they good rates? You know, I've got, how much expo do you have? 30% expo, whatever. What does that mean? If you're a beginner, that can be very confusing. So in this video, I want to explain it as simply as I can. Here's the quick explanation. Higher rates means that your airplane or quadcopter will flip, roll, and pitch and basically move around faster. Likewise, if you have low rates, that means that your aircraft is not as maneuverable, or it won't respond as quickly in terms of, like, if you try to do a roll, it will take you longer to do a complete roll because you have lower rates. Now, the expo part basically means that you can get smoother movements towards the center of the stick. And you might be thinking, what does that mean, center of the stick? Sometimes people say a softer stick or a softer center stick. Like, what the heck does that mean? Well, I'm going to show you right now. If you're like me, you're a visual person and you want some sort of demonstration. So that's what we're going to do today. Right here, I have a servo connected to, it's connected to a receiver and everything. And I have it glued to this piece of paper. And we can see here, I've drawn the minimum and maximum for the servo movements right here. And it may not look perfect. That's because it's not perfect. It's kind of crudely drawn. And then we have sort of our center point right here. It might look a little different depending on the camera angle. And here we have our transmitter. Now, I'm demonstrating this with a servo because it's good for like a visual demonstration, but all of these concepts and principles will be the same for quadcopters as well. So rates and expo is for quadcopters and airplanes. So right now I have 100% on the rates, so full rates, and I have 0% expo. And if you're wondering about how to set up rates and expo, I have videos about that for the FlySky transmitters. You can see that when I move the stick here, that's moving the servo, and we have basically like a one-to-one relationship. When this transmitter stick here reaches the end, the servo reaches the end. Likewise, you have basically the same amount of movement for the entire travel of the servo. So this is full rates, 0% expo. So now I'm going to flip this switch, and I've set it up here to have 40% for the rate. And let's see the difference here. Wow, look at that. So now the needle, the servo, is only going less than half its full distance. You see that? But the stick on the transmitter is moving the whole way. So on an airplane, this would mean that, let's say an aileron, the aileron would only move 40% of what it normally would, which would kind of mean that, leaving out a bunch of other factors, that the airplane would only roll 40% as quickly as it normally would. Now, there are a lot of times when you want to have high rates, but there are a lot of times when you want to have low rates. Like if you are a beginner and you are just learning how to fly, if you have full rates, your airplane might just be all over the place because, you know, it takes a while to learn your muscle memory, and you'll just be jerking the airplane around in the air. Also, maybe the design of the airplane is more touchy, and so it really doesn't take that much to move it around, in which case lowering your rates would be really good and helps with smoother, more detailed flying. This is a pretty dramatic example of lowering the rates. Usually you might lower it to like maybe 60% or 70%, something like that. But this is just to exaggerate the difference between the rates. And one more thing about rates, usually when you talk about rates with a quadcopter, you talk about it in degrees per second because you can be kind of more precise with that. So like in Betaflight, in the flight controller configurator Betaflight, you will see in the rates tab how there'll be a number value to put in for the rates, but it will translate to degrees per second. And so that's a good way of measuring how fast your rates are in your quadcopter, is in degrees per second. So like 1,000 degrees per second is really fast. Like that, like you could spin around like 3 times in a second. But if you have 360 degrees per second for your rates on your quadcopter, that means it will take you a full second to perform a full flip or a full roll. Okay, now let's talk about Expo. Now, Expo can be a little bit trickier to understand, but I think you'll get it after this video. So let's go back to our full rates. So we have 100% rates here. And this is the FlySky i6S, by the way, but most radios, almost any radio, will have this option for rates and Expo. So let's increase the Expo. And notice here on this graph, it's not that great of a graph, but you see how this curve, the line is going from a straight line to a curve. That's the Expo. And let's just put 100% Expo, so like a ton of Expo for this example, so you can actually see what's going on. So when I move this, you can actually see the little crosshairs in the graph move as well. And that's kind of helpful if you're into graphs and mathematical things. You can kind of see what's going on here, that when you get towards the end of the stick travel, it's sort of dropping off that curve. So here's what it looks like on the servo. So if I move the stick slowly to show you how this is working here, notice that there is a ton of movement towards the end of stick travel. So look how much the stick on the transmitter is moving compared to how much the servo is moving. Okay, so but around here at the what they call the center of the stick, which would be like in the centered position for the right stick here, you can see that we can actually move this around like a lot, move the stick around a lot, and the servo doesn't actually move that much. Like we're moving like very, very little, like maybe 20% either direction. And so what that allows us to do is have very smooth, kind of precise movements towards the center of the stick, especially if, maybe your hands are a little shaky, maybe you're nervous. But if you need to make big corrections, or like with a quadcopter, if you want to be able to do a really fast flip, but then move precisely otherwise, then you would want to have high Expo, so that you can get a ton of movement towards that edge of stick travel, if that's how you like it. Again, this is an extreme example. And also with quadcopters, all of this is going to be done in your flight controller configurator, so like Betaflight. But for airplanes, this is typically done in the radio itself and programmed in the radio. If you're still getting the hang of being able to put fine inputs into the stick, to make small adjustments in your aircraft, it can be good to have Expo, because otherwise, you move your stick a little tiny bit without any Expo, and then you might end up moving your quadcopter or your aircraft too much. And so what ends up happening is you might be flying along and you want to just move it a little bit, and you bank it way too much, and then you try to correct the other way, and it's just, if you see somebody flying and they're all like jittery, and they're not trying to be, then that might be an indication that they should put some Expo into their airplane or quadcopter. Now, one thing to keep in mind, just like high rates doesn't always mean better, a lot of Expo does not mean you're going to fly more smoothly. In fact, it can be the opposite sometimes. It can be even more difficult to control if you have too much, because it's kind of like the stick on the transmitter is not doing what you would expect that it would do. Because basically, it's kind of like once you move the stick too much, it's like you're moving it towards a cliff, and then you just fall off the cliff, and then you get way too much servo movement or quadcopter movement. Basically, just make sure that you don't have too much Expo. Probably somewhere like 20 to 40% Expo is good. Also, I should mention that you can actually have negative Expo. So if we move the Expo negative, you will see on the graph it becomes opposite of how it is when it is positive, and the effect is opposite as well. So you get a lot of movement towards the center, which is not what you would want if you are a beginner or ever, or if you're trying to control it finely. And then it really slows down towards the outside. So you see how we just get tons of movement right there, and then really slows down. I don't know a single person who has ever used that So if you are that person, please let me know, because that would be very interesting. Well, there you go, folks. That is rates and expo. I hope this was helpful and explained things, because I know when I first started, I was very confused by this topic. So if this helped you, please let me know. Leave me a comment. And if you still need help, leave a comment and maybe I or someone else will be able to help you. Hey, if you like these kind of tutorial videos, check out this playlist right over here, because I've got a whole bunch of them just for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.